Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to episode number 129 here on season number 2. And today we are getting into buying 10 stocks or the S&P 500. So these videos are meant for educational purposes only and not meant to be taken as financial advice. You're responsible for your assets and to properly protect them. So always do your own research. So this question actually comes from MysticBee1. And she or he, I assume it's a she though based upon the name, says, "Hey, I have a question. Would it be better to invest everything into 10 stocks rather than the S&P 500? What do you think?" I think it's better to just focus on 10 stocks and hold them forever while getting paid dividends. By the way, that's a really great question, and actually one of the questions that I'm trying to figure out with my Robinhood account versus like my Acorns or M1 or Stash account. So really, what is better? I mean, honestly, I can't really say like invest into this or invest into that, but I can share some of my personal experiences and critiques on investing into 10 stocks versus investing into the S&P 500. First of all, I do have a few contextual questions on how you would go about investing into, say, those 10 stocks. Like, what is the strategy on how you would pick them? How would you handle, like, say, a company goes under, and so now you only have 9 stocks in your actual portfolio? Like, do you add another company or just stick with the 9 there and just continue on depositing into them? Also, how would you go about investing into each of them? Like, so would you do a percent into each of them? Would you do more into one versus more into another? Would you run it based upon target percents? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes into running a 10 stock portfolio. And then lastly, I guess, would be about how the dividends would be reinvested. Like, do the dividends only get reinvested into the stock that pays the dividend, or do the dividends get put into other stocks because they're at lower targets? Or how would you go about doing all of that? And like I was just saying, there are a number of factors that can go into a 10 stock portfolio. My second question would be, how are we classifying? I mean, in your question, you say, would it be better? And so my question would be, how are we going to classify better? Are we going with a less risky investment or a investment that's going to give us maximum growth, aside from basically all risks thrown out the window? Or are we looking to have them in equilibrium, to have a great amount of growth paired with a less amount or the least amount of risk possible? But anyways, here are my thoughts. Comparing the two, the 10 stock portfolio would be the most risky, basically hands down. But in the same breath, it could also yield the biggest growth potential. The things that I like about investing into the S&P 500 is that it really takes no time or effort to manage that S&P 500 fund. I mean, pretty much you could just go out and open up a Robinhood or an M1 Finance account or any other brokerage account and buy VOO and expose yourself into the S&P 500. Set up an auto deposit and never have to worry about a thing. Well, unless the S&P 500 crashes, and we would all be kind of like screwed. And say a company goes under or drops out of the S&P 500, that fund should drop them out of the S&P 500, picking up the other company that gets added. So basically, you won't have to worry about what happens if, say, a company that is in that ETF runs out of business or is not performing that well. Lastly, I think the important thing is that we typically use the S&P 500 as a benchmark to gauge other investments. So by basically investing into an S&P 500 index fund, you're going to capture almost the same amount of industry growth. While you're still not going to like beat the industry standard, you're not going to end off worse than like the industry standard as well. And just getting into that, like picking your own stocks, you could pick some very bad stocks that do not perform well. Also, it could be vice versa. To 10 stocks you could pick could do really well, and you would beat the S&P 500 by maybe a lot, and so you would beat the industry average. But I think that that's unlikely to happen for most people. But I mean, for me, I really like the appeal that both bring to the table, the pros and cons of each. However, as I've continued along on my investment journey, when I was a young investor, I really liked the more high risky growth stocks, investments, whatever it may be, because of the huge upside. But as I went further along in my investing journey, I've realized that, you know, maybe the growth is not worth the risk that comes along with it. Like for me, I would say holding a stock last year that only grew 5% compared to a VOO that grew, I mean, at least 11, probably like I want to say like 15 or more percent is crazy. Like, imagine I left like 10% on the table by buying a single stock instead of buying just the VOO ETF. I will say this though, I know that the 10 stock portfolio can be done, but like I was saying, it's just going to require a lot more time and effort. What I really think you're weighing out is that time and effort worth the return that I might possibly get? Anyways, we'll go ahead and leave it right there. Let's jump into the question of the day, which is, what's the opposite of a koala? I don't know, maybe like a beluga whale or something like that, or the killer whale. I don't specific, some kind of sea creature that's ugly, like a lobster or a shrimp. Like I always say, if you got any questions regarding Stash, Acorns, Robinhood, as well as general investing advice, business education coaching, and anyone finance, post those questions down below. Don't forget to subscribe up here and check out my Acorns video right here. Check out this video right here. And as always, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it.